My name is Jonathan Summerfield. I am the CEO and founder of Xiatech. I'd like to say of Google as well. Joe, I was really pleased that between Google and Xiatech, we could invite probably some of the best retail names on the high street. It's just a shame that none of them could make it. Sorry, it's my only joke with the evening. I had no other joke to say, so that was actually quite a good one for me. No more dad jokes, but welcome. Thank you for coming, and a big thank you to anybody that's come from overseas. I think that's probably just you, Suzanne. Anyone else from overseas? No, just Suzanne. So Suzanne, I won't embarrass you, but or maybe I will. Suzanne is from one of our best customers, G-Star Raw, over in the Netherlands, and we'll be talking today. So thank you for coming. Moss were due to come, and unfortunately they've been called to a senior leadership meeting, not on the Victoria line with Alex, but we still will be talking about Moss, and we have two people from the team who will be talking about what we've done with Moss. So anyway, look, big welcome. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. We don't always do evening events because people don't always turn up, and I'm pleasantly surprised you all have made the effort. So thank you so much. It really does mean a lot. Here we go. All right, Robert, I'm just waiting for you. It's okay. So we've got couple of case studies, and we're also going to talk to you about some of the work that Xiatech have been doing as well. I started Xiatech 10 years ago, didn't think we'd get anywhere near to where we are today, and we are actual partners with Google now as well. It's been a real privilege to work with Google over the last few months to really develop that partnership. And thank you for your offices as well, and for this lovely space. I'm going to move on because I'm going to tell you what we're going to talk about today. So I am not Alex Rutter, I am Jonathan Summerfield, but Alex will be talking. Alex is from Google. He looks after retail for Google, and hopefully if he gets here, he will be talking a little bit about data in retail as well. First session, we're going to hear about Moss, or they're now been rebranded Moss. And they're going to talk about what work we've been doing and they've been doing to really drive their analytics capability. So I won't spoil any surprises there. Suzanne's going to talk about G-Star and the work we've been doing with G-Star over the last few years. It's been a really amazing journey, and hopefully you'll learn a few things. And then I'm going to give you some observations of what we've seen in the market around retail and also other industries, but mostly around retail, and something we call composable AI. So this is how we now are delivering AI solutions and why it's slightly different to what you'd probably imagine most people will be doing with AI. And then Alex hopefully will be talking about, or be answering any questions and probably farming them out to anybody in the room as well. And then at the end, we've got some drinks and snacks if you haven't eaten them already. I'm not sure. Yes. Good. All right. Well, look, just before I hand over to the Moss team, just want to tell you about who we are. So Xiatech have been around for over 10 years. We've got over 100 people. We really focus on three key things. Number one is system integration. So we integrate systems and businesses. Second of all, we have tooling around data management, single view of data. And we also provide analytics and AI. And you'll hear a lot about what we've done over the last few years. We do all of that in one platform. It's called XViews. We have coined a term called the hyper integration platform. That's really because it's more than just integration for us. It is a continuous data platform. But the reason we call it hyper integration is because it's not just about the data and the tech and the analytics. It's also about the people, the process, the leadership, and the change that goes with that that data adoption. And some of what you'll hear today from G-Star and Moss will be talking about how they've adopted all the change management around the adoption of new technology. One thing just to point out is the little Mac symbol you see at the bottom. Mac is relatively new in the market. It's a new alliance that's been formed between various independent technology vendors. And it really stands for a composable architecture. So something really which I'm sure most of you have heard of around how to deliver solutions in an iterative fashion, how to deliver value on an ongoing basis without having to do these big bang programs anymore. So in our view, the world of big bang ERP is probably dead. Only very few companies try and approach it. Certainly the last time I saw a big bang ERP implementation was back in my Tesco days, and Phil over in the corner there probably remember the Korean project where we went live with about 35 systems in one night. I will always said never again, and I don't think I've ever seen it again. But certainly, MAC really stands for that composable, iterative delivery of value. Some of what you'll hear around composable AI really adopts that MAC approach. So MAC, for those who don't know, stands for microservices, API, cloud native, headless. And certainly our technology really adopts those principles. And we are a member of that MAC Alliance. Just very quickly, our platform, and I probably couldn't escape an event without telling you about our platform. So the XFuse platform is that little color box, or big color box right in the middle there. It has three main components. The first component is that digital integration hub, which sits right in the middle. That's number one. That is really the bus, the middleware that shares data between systems. So we have these little things called smart connectors, which connect your systems, extract data, transform them, cleanse them, dedupe the data, and then put it into number two, which is our unified data repository. That is where we deliver a single view of data. So that's a single view of customer, single view of inventory, single view of products, sales, orders, etc. And some of the solutions you'll hear today really uses that single view of data in a considerable way. And then thirdly, on the right-hand side, the data lake and insights. So we overlay against all of the data that we host for our customers. We overlay data lake and also insights and analytics. So that insights hub is really our pre-canned set of retail dashboards and AI, and they can be configured and customized to your requirements as well. So really those three things in one. It's all cloud native, hosted, believe it or not, on Google. So it is very much a cloud native platform, continuous data platform, which does integration, single view of data and analytics. Hopefully everything you'll hear today will shout loud and clear about what we do. If not, please see me afterwards or any of the team. We can talk you through what we do. Okay. Any questions so far? All with me? Good. I am going to pass you to Ara and Peter, who are from Xiatech, but have worked very closely with Moss over the last 2 years. Where are they? They're here somewhere. There you are at the back. Hello. Big round of applause for them.
Right. Good evening, everyone. As Jonathan said, Peter and I have worked with Moss over the last 2.5 years. So Ed, unfortunately, was unable to be here today, but we have his blessing to take you through the journey that we've been on with them for the last 2.5 years and still are today.
Yeah, so Moss, they're a high street retailer of fine suits and tailoring, and you'll be familiar with them. They've got 150 stores. They sell online. They've got outlets. They've got concessions. They sell on marketplaces. Rebranded Moss, as Jonathan just said, from Moss Bros. And they've been around a long time. So founded in 1851, 170 plus years. And they hired their first suit in 1897. I looked it up before we came. So, and that's how many people get introduced to the brand because of their hiring. They are the leading hire company in the UK. And because of their size, they get involved in a number of big events. So Ascot is very big for them. They did all of the suits for the Met Police for the Queen's funeral. And they did the tailoring for Peaky Blinders. Just throw that one in there. And yeah.
So I think if we just sort of step back, because I mentioned we've been working with Moss for 2.5 years now. So if we kind of step back to post-COVID, I say post-COVID, it was probably post-wave 1 or 2. I can't quite remember which one at the moment. But that's when we first started the relationship. So we thought it'd be useful to give you a little bit of context about what the situation was like then and really how we started working with Moss and some of the challenges that they were facing at the time.
Yeah, so just coming out of the pandemic, there was a huge pent-up demand for weddings. And historically, weddings took place at the weekends. You might have been to the occasional Friday wedding, but weddings take place at the weekend, which means when you're hiring suits, you can get the suit back, you can launder it, and you can get it ready for the collection for the following week. But the problem with this pent-up demand is there aren't enough venues to suddenly everybody have the weekend wedding. So weddings were taking place every day of the week. And that's a real problem when you've got to service a suit and it's out for like a 5-day cycle. and there's anecdotal stories from the stores of people coming in and buying the wrong size or buying anything that would fit them because they just couldn't get it. And so that coincided with, obviously, uncertainty about whether office work would continue. So people were going back to the office, but they didn't know if that would continue. Lots of people were still at home, and being a predominantly formal retailer, weddings and office wear are a key element of that. So there was a lot of uncertainty. And then, just to add into the mix, there was a global shipping crisis. So they couldn't get containers. The price of containers went up tenfold. And they suddenly found themselves having to answer questions that they'd never answered before, and realizing that they weren't in a position to do it. They didn't have the data, they didn't have the technology, and they didn't have the people to answer those questions. They're previously set up mostly for reporting. Now they needed to answer these difficult questions. They didn't know what to do. And that's the point they realized that their platform was not suited to their business going forward.
Yeah, and I remember them saying that, the first global strategy session they had post, pandemic, post first wave, as Peter said, they were faced with these questions that they just didn't know how to answer. And there was a quote that, an Excel spreadsheet just wasn't going to do it anymore. And that's really the start of our relationship. So we wanted to talk to you just briefly about some of the challenges that they were also facing on top of the kind of trading environment that we just spoke through there. I'm sure a number of you in the room will recognise some of these and probably have faced similar challenges yourself and may still face some of those today. So a number of them were really around the technology and tooling that they had access to. So they were operating on legacy systems that were integrated point to point. So that prevented them from having flexibility, speed to market. They did have a data warehouse, but they weren't able to see things at the level of granularity that they needed, and reporting was siloed. The usual challenges around not being able to trust your data, spending lots of time manipulating that using Excel-based reporting, and not having those single views that you rely on to make those day-to-day business decisions. And the last one around the limited in-house analytics capabilities, that is not meant in any disparaging way at all. It's really just about, off the back of the trading environment that we just took you through, it had really shone a lens on the need to be able to have access to that data, have quick, granular access to that data, so they could make those data-driven decisions and pivot their business in the way that they needed to in an unprecedented trading environment.
And you could say they'd done nothing wrong up until this point. So they did have a data warehouse. There's Microsoft SQL Server and some of the tooling that comes with that, SSIS, SSRS, Excel cubes on top of that. But like if most retailers in the room, they sweat the asset. So 15 years ago, you might have said that was best practice, or if not best practice, it's certainly a recognized template of a data warehouse that they've done. And so I guess it kind of caught up with them very, very quickly that they didn't have the need for a modern analytics platform.
So what are some of the things that they were actually looking to achieve at a business at that point in time, and based on the challenges that we've just taken you through? So they really wanted to get in place the building blocks that would ultimately drive customer satisfaction and obviously increase sales, as any organization is looking to do. But that 360-degree view of customer is something that they thought was really pivotal for them. So Moss as a business, purchases are destination purchases. It's not about compulsive purchasing. So for them, curating that perfect customer experience, really understanding all the different touch points with their customers, that end-to-end journey in their life cycle, that was really important to them, because they wanted to create that best-in-class experience and interact with their customers in the best way possible. And they thought if they were able to achieve that and get that view end-to-end and understand everything at a granular level and be able to pivot and change their behavior and interactions accordingly, that would really drive satisfaction, loyalty, and, as I said, ultimately sales.
Yeah, and these are emotionally charged events as well. Your wedding, or your best man, or your first job. So there's a lot at stake for getting this right, and there's a big win as well. If you think about maybe post-university. I remember late 20s, there was about 3 or 4 years where I was 3 or 4 weddings per year. I haven't been to a wedding for ages now, and the next one will be my son's. But and so if you can trap that group of men who go for the first wedding and hire their suit, and you can do a good job, then you can tap into, you know, a much wider market and pivot that the other way around. If you disappoint somebody on their wedding, they're not going to forget about it. You know, they're going to be telling that story 20 years later. So customer satisfaction for Moss is key to the whole experience.
Thank you. So how did we actually help them overcome some of those challenges, achieve some of those objectives, and how did we work with them? So we took a use case driven approach. So we selected 4 areas of the business, which were hire, customer, retail, and merchandising, as the areas that, with guidance from Moss, were the ones that they wanted to see the most change in. So we worked with different stakeholders within the business to understand what some of their current challenges and pain points were, and really what they wanted to get to in terms of a 2B form. Our teams worked really closely with them to be able to actually advise them and guide them from a best practice perspective, and to really enable them to get the best use of our platform to achieve that single view of data and to get to those data-driven decision making. I think, Peter, you'll talk through a couple of examples within each of those areas.
Yeah, so I mean, hire was a real burning issue for them at the time, because they could see from the order book that there was going to be a huge demand for the summer. So if you think about summer weddings, May, June, you start planning that, you start booking your suit after Christmas. This is what happens, January, February. This is when you place the order. They could already see that they've got many more orders in, and they were worried about what that was going to translate into. They were doing their hire forecasting on an Excel spreadsheet, and it just simply couldn't cope with the granularity and the complexity. So it's actually our first kind of demo of the GCP platform and BigQuery to just show them how easy it was to step that granularity of forecast down, even to event type. So, you know, weddings, ascot, funerals, graduation, etc., down to individual weeks. And then we forecasted that every day for 365 days before the event, to show them what the anticipated demand would look like at the time. That allows, the earlier that they know there's going to be an issue, the cheaper it is to solve that problem. So if you know that you're going to run out of suits and you get 3 months notice, you can buy some more from China and they'll arrive on time. If you know 6 weeks, you can make them in the UK. If you find out on the day, you're paying for a motorcycle courier to carry a suit from another shop, and you probably won't make any money. If not, you'll lose money on that deal. So that was our first use case that we went with them, and we turned that around very, very quickly. We did that forecast in a couple of days, and then that really got the traction within the business, because they could see that moving to a modern platform with the power and with the people who know how to use it was really going to work for them. So we moved on to customer as a kind of second area that they really wanted to get into more detail with. So they have a marketing execution platform, they send emails, and they have a really reasonably high opt-in rate from their customers. And because it's event business, and because you need to know about what's happening with your suit, they actually do get a very high email capture rate and marketing opt-in. So we're running campaigns for customers, but the way the attribution model works for that out-of-the-box platform is just not at all suitable for their type of business. It's just very, very bespoke. If you get an email about summer wedding suits and you get it on the Tuesday, you don't go online within the half hour and book your suit for the wedding. You go on the Saturday. It's a very heavily weekend based business. And so we needed to we took all of that data out of their marketing execution platform and we put it into XFuse, and we built bespoke segmentation attribution models for them to give them that visibility of what was happening with their customers. And they'd really never had that info before. And it shone a light in a couple of areas that I won't go into because they're kind of commercially sensitive, but areas where they've taken direct action as a result of that. And then we've had a real focus this year on retail productivity. So Moss stores are very complex retail environments. There's a lot of things happen in those stores that don't result in sales going through the till. So you need to track those interactions, and you need to measure a 360 view of the store. And in doing so, that's also shone a light on some areas, some opportunities for improvement. Not that they're doing much wrong, but there's a lot more low-hanging fruit to be gained out of proper staff scheduling, proper intelligent opening hours, store routines, things like day of delivery, booking in stock, etc., and just the impact of appointments. And if you've ever been into a Moss store, and I do visit them regularly because I kind of feel like I work for them, you've only got to have a party, a stag party of 8 people getting measured for a suit, and that store is chaos. Right? They're very complex retail environments. So we've been working with them in an iterative fashion, increasing the kind of complexity and the granularity of this retail productivity model. And it uses some, there are some linear regression models to kind of forecast footfall, and then forecast staff and match staff to demand. And then obviously for a clothing manufacturer, core merchandising it is really key. And they've got an aging platform that they use for merch planning and allocations, but it's out of the box. And if you think about, suits are much more complicated than t-shirts. You've got to, if you've got to selling a 3-piece suit, you've got to have the jacket, the waistcoat, and the trousers all in stock, all in the right sizes. And it's very hard. Systems weren't built to deal with that level of complexity. So we've taken on a kind of allocation and a terminal stock clearance module for them. So again, it relies on a very strong sales forecast. Then we identify things like a minimum viable display. You don't sell one suit if it's on the peg without the other suits. So regrouping and moving stock that's fragmented into minimum viable display stores, and then a bucket filling algorithm, which takes the remaining stock from the fragmented stock and then fills it in a kind of garment-based Tetris, if you will. Yeah, we're in the process of implementing that at the moment.
And I think the process is iterative. So whilst we started with these 4 areas of the business, we're still doing more within this space and across other areas of the business. So if there are things, we talked about coming out of COVID, key questions that they were unable to answer. If questions come up today, that's something new, they will come to us and say, right, what do you think about this? Can you explore our data? Give us a sense. And that's really helping to inform their strategy as well.
Yeah, so we talked earlier about customer satisfaction, and we've really transformed the way that they can view their customers and all of the many touch points. So before, it was as simple as sales. We knew somebody had sales, and we knew if they had marketing opt-in permissions. And of course, we've still got that, but now we can add to that their browsing history from Google Analytics, their campaign data from the marketing platform, their customer service records from Freshdesk, which is their customer assistant, their product reviews from FIFO, their appointments, their alterations. And we suck all of that data in to really give that 360 view of the customer. And because of the way the appointments work, you can work out friendship groups, because if you do a group hire, we actually know who's friends with who. So you can kind of build node graph. You can build graphs.
Yeah, and the platform's set up so that if there are additional customer touch points that they add in the future, then obviously we'll be able to ingest data from those easily and feed that into the analytics that are already set up, or be that new analytics. So it's that constant cycle of continuing to capture as well, continuing to understand, and continuing to enhance and enrich that engagement with their customers.
I think it'd be fair to say, and I don't think they'd mind me saying this, they haven't quite worked out how they're going to use it. because you buy a suit, it's not as simple as sending an email the next month saying, we've got a fresh range of suits in, do you fancy another suit? That the business model, it's just, the business model is not like that. And so the way that you talk to customers is much more complicated than just the kind of fast moving fashion business. So we've stepped down the granularity in what they have access to, and we've done a number of successful campaigns with that data, but we're still working out what that means in the long term.
So you saw this earlier when Jonathan talked through it. So Moss have used and continue to use our XFuse platform, which is hosted on Google. So the smart connectors that you see there, and this is an example of their estate and some of the key applications within it. We're ingesting data from those key systems. They're going into our centralized integration hub and then off to the right-hand side, where they're then used for analytics. And this is really about, I think when we started at the beginning, one of the points I mentioned was legacy technology, point-to-point integration. So this was about removing that constraint as well from a technology and tooling perspective, and really helping them to liberate their data and unlock the value from the insights that we're able to surface off the back of this. So Ed did write these 3 points, and I appreciate the first one probably doesn't sound very objective, but I think I am well qualified to stand here and repeat that on his behalf. But he really did want to get these 3 points across. So the first one, which is bring in experts to help accelerate your journey. Again, I will say somewhat objectively, working with our insights and analytics team, I think I've really seen how it's been able to transform Moss and other customers. So we almost become an extension of those teams. As I said, they come to us with strategic business questions that they want us to help give insight into. They want us to go in and explore the data. But equally, our teams will do that themselves anyway. They will just look at things. They'll look at trends, patterns, anomaly detection. They'll say, have you thought about this? That's something that Moss in particular really valued about the relationship over the past 2.5 years. It's built a lot of trust at all levels of the business, from a C-level through to store managers, because they know that we've got that expertise from an industry perspective, but we can also bring best practice into their businesses, and that is helping them to grow and excel as a business. The second one, I'd focus on the agile and business first. So again, coming out of the pandemic with that whole backdrop of the challenges that they faced coming out of COVID-19, one of the things that they say today that they really enjoy about having worked with us in a partnership that we have is that we have that agility, we have that flexibility that we can pivot based on their business needs. So if new questions come up, if they want to enter into new marketplaces, channels, whatever it might be, new product ranges, that we're set up as a joint team to be able to work in a way that's flexible, and we can just change based on what they want to focus on as business. That has been really important to them. And finally, embracing a modern analytics ecosystem. So again, removing the constraints that previous legacy technology and integration had, really implementing technology and tooling that's an enabler for their business, because that's where they really see the ability to get flexibility and speed and ultimately competitivity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Moss team. Just before we carry on, we have some members of the team here, particularly those that were mentioned in the Insights Analytics team. Can you just put your hands up, guys? Because and don't be shy, Alberto. Yeah. So the 3 guys in the middle of the room, honestly, if you talk to them, I don't understand what they talk about. They are brilliant, and all the stuff that you heard there was built by those guys, and of course the guys at the back. So brilliant. Thank you so much for that insight. Next, so I'll give you a small story. Back in 2020, I think, a lady called Denise Fender, who's the Chief Digital Officer, was at FitFlop, moved to G-Star. I saw her in NRF in New York, and she said, "What do you know about Power BI?" Okay, it's a reporting tool. What she really meant was, how can you help us? Because we're in a bit of a predicament, which Suzanne will talk to you about. Going on 3 months, we were all in lockdown. and we started to engage with G-Star on a journey, which really you'll hear about now. But it's been an incredible journey, and thank you again for coming. And I'm not going to do it justice. So I'm going to pass over to Suzanne. But thank you to the Moss team, and thank you to G-Star.
Thank you for the introduction. So when Xiatech asked me to speak here today, I actually should have said no, because I'm not the biggest fan of public speaking. However, I said yes, and that's because we have been working for at least indeed almost 4 years now, very closely together, and I really value our partnership. Thank you, Charlie. Yeah, so I'm Susanne Garretsen, head of the data and analytics department at G-Star, where I'm working now over 8 years now, and always in the field of data and strategy. I would like to share today the journey that we've been on to build our data foundation, on which we can serve then on top our advanced analytics to really optimize our business. First, I will tell a bit about G-Star. So G-Star is a global denim brand, founded in 1989. So we are a bit less long around as Moss is. In Amsterdam, where still our HQ office is based. And we operate both in digital retail and wholesale. We have over 4,500 selling points in 60 countries. And the G-Star data team is based in Amsterdam, and it's centralized, fully centralized. And yesterday we just launched our new brand campaign with Burna Boy, who is, I believe, based here in London, if he's around. And this is our biggest brand campaign ever, so keep an eye on it. Yes, so the challenge that we had, we moved from a classical wholesaler to a much more retail and digital-oriented business. As Jonathan mentioned, yeah, we had a new chief digital officer coming in. And yeah, this focus to even more digital gave us both much more data points around that consumer, but also the relevance of having consumer insights became much more important. And we had a legacy on-premise data warehouse, similar as Moss, also SQL Server with on top SSIS and data cubes. And we had limited information on the consumer behavior. So we had all the transactional data and some behavioral data, but not what we have nowadays. So this was actually a great opportunity for us to build a new data lake, fully cloud-based. So we teamed up with Xiatech, and they could help us both with performing the Xfuse platform, but also in bringing in data engineers, consultants, and software developers. And at the same time, we made a migration from our legacy CRM system to a customer data platform, which could also help in really improving that customer focus with Bloomreach. And all of that from the Xfuse data integration, and that single data view is then pushed into the GCP. Yeah, so here we have a schematic overview of the architecture. I won't go in many details here, but the key is that we indeed have that Xfuse platform. We have the smart connectors, so it's an easy way to integrate everything. And then we have the single data view, and then from there it's pushed to both Bloomreach, the CDP, and pushed to GCP. So it's one single data view is created, one source of truth, to make sure that both the CDP and the GCP are really well aligned. Yes. So here I will tell a bit more on in detail what kind of information we do have on that customer 360 view. So starting with .com and app. So we have information on, of course, the purchases and returns, but also on their search behavior on the website, what they click on, what they add to their basket, wish list, etc., and through which source they came in on the website. And on communication, so main source here is the CDP. So okay, newsletter sent, journey sent, SMS sent. What do they open? What do they click through? but also from a communication perspective. We have the customer service, NPS results, so we have also more on their sentiment information. And then for digital marketing, so we have integrated all our digital in the advertisements, so we have all the costs, all the impressions, clicks, and what leading to conversions. And then we have the offline POS system, so from the physical brick stores, and then the transactions there, but also if people register in store. And then we have the clean rooms. I don't know if any one of you know the term clean rooms. No, neither did I. So there was Denise again. She was talking about clean rooms, what's the holy grail? So a clean rooms is a way to get information on other online platforms than your own controlled online platforms. But I will touch upon it later in the last use case. And then I will explain the concept and how we use it. So I'd like to discuss 4 use cases that we built on top of this customer 360 view. The first one is predictive CLTV. So first what we did, we had all this information on the customer, and we were able to calculate their CLTV and see by any dimension, like, okay, from which channel do we get most high valued customers? So is that from Google or from Facebook? But we also would like to have a predictive CLTV. So what are they going to spend in the next year? So the data science team built a model, a random forest for those who are interested. And they, I think, over 300 features went into that model to really predict, okay, what will be the CLTV of this customer in the coming year. Some key predictors are their online behavior, their recent online behavior, and also their historical purchases. And then some use cases, we push this predictive CLTV that we really have on a customer level. We push that as well to our CDP, so the customer data platform. And then we can use it for targeting, for campaign targeting. And we can use it to find lookalike audience. We say, oh, here are our customers with the high CLTV, and find similar customers. But we can also use it to say, oh, we have here a customer that actually has a predictive CLTV for the next year of 0. So it looks like we're going to lose this customer. So we can send them a reactivation campaign, and including a voucher, like come back and here you get your 10% discount. And then the second one, a customer segmentation. So having indeed that customer data platform where we build a lot of journeys to, and a journey is either an email or an SMS that's being triggered by consumer behavior. But to further differentiate that, customer segmentation would be really useful. So we had a k-means grade algorithm to segment our customers. And the nice thing here is that it was an unsupervised learning model. So we didn't tell upfront, like, these will be our segments and fit all these customers to either one of these segments. But really from the data, it was said like, oh, these are your segments. And there were 6 segments at the end, like a denim lover or a price hunter or a premium lovers. And then also there, the journeys we could specify on those certain segments. And then the ROAS, so revenue over advertisement spend. So we had built a full attribution model for all our digital marketing spend, with a lot of help of Tay over there. But the nice thing here is that the ROAS, for if you want to optimize your marketing spend and you look to your costs, your marketing cost of yesterday in the conversions that you had, you actually are also interested in what the net sales have become. So not only your cross sales, but okay, how much of them are going to be returned. So for that case, we also built a return forecast model. So on order line level, we can predict whether or how big the chances that it will be returned. So then we could really optimize on margin there instead of only on revenue. And it was integrated into product feeds as well. So the product feeds that are sent to Facebook and to Google. And as a result, we actually managed in last year within one channel, one tactic media channel, to have a saving of 5 million euros by almost keeping flat on the gross sales. So there was a huge improvement on our ROAS. Yeah, and then the clean rooms, as mentioned. So you can see the clean rooms as a sort of a black box where two parties are able to send data to on a individual consumer level, but then anonymized. And then only on an aggregated level, you can get the data out. So we, G-Star, as a clean room together with Amazon Marketing Cloud, which is an interesting channel for us because we both have marketing on AMC, but also it's an online selling platform for us. So AMC sends information on our campaigns and G-Star customers that we run there, and we do send information. And then on an aggregated level, we can get a lot of insights. Like what is the overlap between our consumers, and we also send information on that customer segmentation. Okay, and how if the premium lover within our system, what are the characteristics of that customer in AMC. And there also we had last year a fantastic improvement in the ROAS. I think we had even 5% less digital marketing spent, and we increased our sales by 135%. So the ROAS went up from 4 to 10. So I can really recommend clean rooms. Yes, and then the last slide. So the learnings from our building or from our journey that we had. First one on the data foundation. So yeah, indeed, team up with an expert to really build a solid data foundation. And what we did is we started really on an incremental part for us. So that consumer behavioral information, we didn't have that, at least not to this level in our legacy data warehouse. So it was really good to get the business on board and to get them enthusiastic about this project instead of that they only thought, oh no, a new reporting or. And a learning for us is that also from day one, focus on data quality and stability. We had still our on-premise data warehouse next to us, so many people were also using that. And then it was sometimes for us a bit of a backup, like I said, oh, but we also have that. So, but then you lose the trust within the business. And creating a user-friendliness BI layer as more and more people within the business, so not only our internal people in the data team, the data engineers, data scientists, or analysts, but also some business champions are working with the data, create very user-friendly BI layers. But to me, the biggest learning was in the business collaboration. So we had an analytical traineeship, started that 2 years ago, and we had 5 trainees who then had rotated throughout the business and also rotated within our team. And they were really the people that could integrate into the business. And some of the key examples were data scientists. So that was, he came up with the best models because he was not only looking to the data and to the possibilities, and but really in the business and seeing what would be key here to deliver. So I'm really confident that with these 2 things, we can even in the next coming years build much nicer models as well. So really looking forward to that. And also to still keep on working with Xiatech. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. That was fantastic. Very, very kind of you to come over again. Thank you. it's time for me just to ask people to put their hands up who are the extended Xiatech team. So if you can just put your hands up in the room if you're part of the company. Yes, thank you. If you want to know anything about what you've heard today, please do grab the guys. They are around and tell you about what we do. Moss and G-Star have been with us for quite a few years, and we've developed a really good roadmap and a set of incremental business value that I think you've heard about. What we wanted to talk to you about was really a relatively new concept called composable AI. Obviously, AI is not new, but the composable AI is a new concept which we've been introducing to some of our customers, and we wanted to share it with you. Hopefully it makes sense, and if not, please ask questions. And if it's really complex, ask Alberto, because he's our head of data science. Just put your hand up in the air, Alberto. Thank you. So I'm going to try and do it justice. If I don't, Alberto will tell me, I'm sure. Okay, excuse me. Apparently I've got a 100-day cough. I'm on a day about 26, I think. So within an organization, 84% of organizations surveyed by Statista believe that AI will give them a competitive advantage, which you'd probably expect. But Gartner believe that about 85% of those projects actually fail to produce a return. Now, you heard from Moss and you heard from G-Star about an actual business return they're getting from some of the data insights that they're achieving through the work we're doing with them. But why is it that if you've got so many companies believing in AI driving business value, why are so many companies failing to get a return on that? Part of the reason, we believe, is the implementation, is the way that actually this is implemented within the organization. I'm going to try and show a little example. So I'm sure many of you have seen a retail landscape that looks something like this. Just show of hands, how many of your retail landscapes look like or did look like this? So but one of my first jobs I did at Tesco was I sat in a room for I don't know how many days and drew out a system landscape on a piece of paper. And I think we had about 200 systems on there, and it definitely looked worse than that, you're right. But we set about trying to figure out how to fix it. And half of what we do at Xiatech is trying to help organizations find their way through a legacy monolith or a legacy complex point-to-point landscape looks like this. But some of these issues will resonate with all of you. Each project is probably as hard as the last, probably harder. As you put in a new system, it just exacerbates the point-to-point problem. Obviously, there's lots of technology inertia, lots of throwaway point-to-point integrations, very hard to maintain and manage. But importantly, getting at the data is really hard. There's limited reuse, lots and lots of data silos, lots and lots of manual data intervention, and just trying to grab data from this is hard. I'm sure part of your day jobs is trying to go into each of these systems, extract the data, put it into some sort of spreadsheet and try and make sense out of it. What we try to do is try and automate that. But in addition, if you try to introduce new concepts like AI on top of this, it's really hard. Data is locked away, there's no reuse, you can't get at the data you need, you can't automate it. Well, what chance have you got to try and make an AI project work in something like that? Excuse me 1 second. Alberto, you're definitely going to have to come up in a minute and rescue me. So if that's a typical retail landscape, what does a traditional data and integration solution look like? And I'm sure a lot of you will recognize this. So these are your operational systems. Now, the reason I can talk with some expertise about this is because this picture is actually the picture I drew when I was at Marks & Spencer about 30 years ago. This was the first data warehouse that Marks & Spencer have implemented. And this is pretty much the architecture that we drew. You got lots of operational systems, and through a set of ETL routines, you can pump the data into a data warehouse. And on top of that data warehouse, you have some lovely reporting tools. Now, in the days of Marks & Spencer, two of my ex-colleagues from M&S back then, this was in '96. The data warehouse was on a DB2 data warehouse on the mainframe, OS 390, written in COBOL. And the reporting tool was MicroStrategy. That's still around. That was the best part of the project, by the way. But everything was really hard coupled. So if you look at how we developed that data warehouse, there were views, summaries, aggregates that were all hard coupled to the ETL routines from those systems. Therefore, it's pretty much a hard coupling all the way back to the operational systems providing their data. But that's actually quite common even now, right? We see this now, and people are still doing ETL routines that are really hard coupled to getting data out of the system and then putting it into the data warehouse. And those reports are actually built directly off those aggregates, of which are directly built from the ETL routines. You then try and overlay AI on top of that. Well, certainly in isolation, the AI projects are actually of value, but that you try and share the value across projects actually becomes very, very difficult. And I'll show you some illustrations why. In addition, you try and introduce a new system now into that landscape, where you've got the same, excuse me, you've got the same issues, because you're going to have to go through. You come to give me a glass of water, are you? Thank you very much. I actually do have one. I just haven't drunk it. Now I have two. Thank you. This is Alex, by the way, who was stuck. And
I'll be back later.
Thank you, Alex. A Google cup. Anyone wants one? So along comes System C, where it goes through the same issues. You have to really hard couple your ETL routines to that. So traditional still works, but it's hard and complex to support. And certainly when you look at AI, it's really difficult to try and get value out of each isolated AI project. And I'll show you what that means. So at Xiatech, hopefully you've heard by now, we focus on the business outcomes. And what that means is we look for the opportunities in the business and then put the technology in place to help solve those business outcomes. Some of these examples are from, all of them are from existing customers. Some of them are driven by AI. Some of them are just unlocking data and producing insights on top of the data. All of them relate to business outcomes, and all of what we do relates to what a business wants to achieve. And you've heard Suzanne and Ara and Peter talk about these before. But in the connected omnichannel retailer, the metrics, they're calculated in isolation from each other. So in isolation, they do a really good job. So if you want to look at improving your inventory forecast, fantastic, we can do that. And people do that all the time. You want to increase your on-time delivery, you can do that too. But how do they relate to each other? How do you produce an ecosystem of data which feed off each other? One more time. What I wouldn't do is shake my hand afterwards, by the way. It's probably a bad idea. So if you look at how do you drive composable AI, what does it mean? How does it relate to isolated AI? So let me just show you the difference, and then hopefully it will start ring some bells. So isolated AI is really where you have a set of AI routines or machine learning routines that work in isolation to complete that specific task. They're siloed. They do a really good job of doing what they're set out to do. But it achieves just that single objective, that single result. It may receive inputs from various data sources, but that's great. I mean, actually, a lot of what you heard today is isolated AI. Where does the value come? The value comes when the output of each individual isolated AI actually starts to feed other AI projects. And right at the beginning, if you think back to when I was talking about composable as an approach, composable as an approach is that iterative implementation of a roadmap over time, delivering incremental value. And we believe at Xiatech that composable AI is really the way to go with AI, because you can deliver lots and lots of AI projects, but they should all be connected to each other. So the output of one can actually feed the input of another, and it's continuous learning ecosystem of AI. And I'm going to show you some examples in a minute. So that's really what composable AI is. It's a collection of connected collaborative AI models. The output of one, as I said, feeds into the other, and each AI does have its own objective, but they work collectively towards a greater goal. So let me show you this in a retailer. If you've got normal standard retail value chain, plan, buy, move, etc. At the bottom, you've got the different customers of that data, and you've got the different types of data entities that are produced. The value chain is connected, but often the technology solutions and the data actually remain isolated from each other. So if you look inside those little data stores, they are very valuable pockets of data, but they're isolated from each other. Therefore, it's very difficult to share the output from one to go into another. But the impact of poor planning, for example, will affect somewhere down the value chain. So poor planning is going to affect your margins, going to affect your sell-through, affect all sorts of things. So unless you start to consider different elements of the value chain when you're putting these things together, actually you can extract an enormous amount more value. Not to say that isolated AI won't give you value. We believe collaborative composable AI will actually give you more value on top of the data. So some examples here. Within each specific domain, you've got different AI projects that will deliver value. But the opportunity is really how to create that holistic synergy across that value chain. How do you get an output out of what happens in logistics or sales or customer that feeds the others in order to produce that enormous amount of value from the data? So I'm not sure if you can read what this says. I can't. So I'm just going to have a look at that. Okay. Composable AIs. So they feed off each other as that ecosystem, as I said. So let's take an example, customer segmentation. You heard about Suzanne talk about customer segmentation quite a lot. So in isolation, enormous amount of value. But actually what G-Star and Moss have started to do is feed the outputs of that customer segmentation into other models. Let me show you some examples. This is just an example ecosystem we put together. And we've started to deliver this for some of our customers. So the output of customer segmentation can actually start to feed into potential lifetime value or into the next purchase date. Or even when you start to think about your assortment planning and assortment optimization, how do you plan your assortment in different locations based on the demographics of that particular area? How do you look at the segmentation of your customer base and understand which products that those customers would like to have in those particular regions? Not just online, this is about physical stores as well. And the outputs of those things start to feed other AI elements as well. So recommended products, forecasting sales, demand forecasting, your inventory optimization, your on-shelf availability. They all should actually feed into each other in order to create that ecosystem of value. We've started to deliver this, and what you really have as an output is extremely valuable outcomes. So if by the time you get to markdown optimization, which is something we are doing for some of our retailers, actually that is only as valuable as the previous step as an output. So there will be inputs into markdown optimization that are in isolation, but once you start to feed other steps of AI into that markdown optimization, for example, it provides an enormous amount of value. Now, these are just examples, but the customer segmentation was just the starting point, and you can see some of the color coding, hopefully, in relation to different data domains. Let's choose a different starting point. So let's go with, say, price modeling in elasticity. So that can also feed into the markdown optimization, and also demand forecasting, and you can start to see the picture drive up from a different angle. So really the outcomes are really what you need to understand here. So as a particular AI is running, it will produce a set of outcomes. Those outcomes then get ingested into the next step, start to provide more and more value as you go along that ecosystem. Of course, I can also plug our platform. So you heard earlier around the ecosystem of smart connectors that we have. So at the bottom, you'll see the systems that any retailer will have, whether that's ERP or e-commerce or warehouse management. We feed that data through the digital integration hub, and then it goes into our unified data repository. And that unified data repository is the concept of one single operational source of data. So that's customers, inventory, sales, products, etc. And then inside the actual box, hopefully what you'll see is, can you see that at the back, by the way? Is that legible? All the different AI routines that actually use that data. So that's really where we start to really use the data in a way that whether that's Gen AI or AI specific for a particular business task can actually start to feed each other. The other thing to note is, and hopefully you may not be able to see that, the outcomes of each of those AI models then feed back into that unified data repository. So you get a continuous loop of feedback of AI so that other routines start to ingest that data as well. I probably will skip this because you may not be able to see it that well. But this is really just showing you inside the box of how we do it and the methodology we use to feed each other. Again, in our world, delivering this in a composable way, in an iterative way, is really the answer. Don't try and solve world hunger. Don't try and have a big AI project that will solve everything. That big monolithic AI, a bit like the monolithic ERP, probably is quite hard to attempt. And actually take each piece by piece, try to attack an AI problem, and then start to use the output of that problem and feed it into others. The way we do this is we use benchmarking, we use proof of concepts. So we will take a particular idea, let's say it's markdown optimization, we'll feed it into the ideation phase, start to train the models, look at the outcome of those models, start to prove the concept, refine it, watch the learning, and keep going until we've actually got something that can be used as the deployment model. This is just it in action. Really underneath the purple box there, you'll see all the different components that we use. But really the key message here is you can continue to evolve these. You don't have to try and solve world hunger in one go. You don't have to get perfect in one go. You start to see the output of one of your AI routines, start to build up that picture of clarity, see what happens, train the model, evolve it, evaluate it, and continue to refine it. The other thing to note at the bottom there is this Insights Hub, and Suzanne talked about it earlier. That's the way of viewing your data. So how do you view the data? Through dashboards, through visualizations, etc. All of these AI routines should have a pane of glass in which you can actually view the outcome. And that's what we call our Insights Hub. But that's something that is really deployable as easy as, say, a web page, right? This is an HTML portal that we deploy, and you can view all of your AI output through that Insights Hub. But on an ongoing basis, we continue to refine these models and actually use all different components you can see there. The message that I want to probably leave you with is why composable AI is good for you as a business. If you look on the right-hand side, the big waterfall, big bang AI will take you a long time, probably. The isolated AI can provide value, but it can take a while as well. Composable AI can be delivered in as little as a few days. And then you start to iterate, you start to build up proof of concepts, you start to learn off each of the models and actually deliver incrementally as you go. I'm getting the nod, I think, at the back. Is it time? No? Okay. Thank you. So composable AI, I won't go into any more detail. If you do want to go into any more detail, I probably can't. And that's the man you have to see, or that team over there. But one thing to note is we're not the only people now talking about composable AI. In fact, we just read a paper 2 days ago from University of California at Berkeley. They're calling it compound AI, compound systems. Not as cool as composable AI. I think I prefer that term. But there is a paper you can read on it. So we're not actually alone in talking about it, but it is actually being talked about in academia as well now. Really, I'm going to leave you one message. Future AI is composable. It is powered by our platform. We do use Google. And if you want to talk to us about it, please come up and have a chat. And I'm going to leave you there and say thank you very much, everybody, for coming. We're going to have some questions in a minute. Before I do, I think we have Alex from Google who's going to have a little chat with us first. So thank you very much. I'll pass you over to Alex.
That's not the one.
Thank you very much. That was a far better speech than mine. Thank you. Final few minutes, we have the opportunity to take any questions that you might have heard. Sorry, any questions about what you might have heard. Yeah, please.
Jump in because I have a train that hopefully is going to run on time, but I'm going to leave. So you, like we can jump in and then we'll leave. But your composable AI, the composable AI, very interesting. Huge amount of integration, layer upon layer of machine learning. Ultimately, the organization is people making decisions, taking actions. How on earth do they deal with all of that output and insight?
Thank you for that. How long have you got? Yeah, so I think right at the beginning where we all started actually was, what is the business outcome you're trying to achieve, right? So we always start with, what are the business objectives? Where do you want to get to? Following that, I think forget the technology, it's about change management and really understanding the impact of all the technology change on the business. I think I go back into my personal background, which is over 30 years in IT. I think about the implications of every piece of technology that I've implemented. It's all about the impact on the people. You're absolutely right. How do you go about that? Change management. And I think I probably would take too long to talk about it now. Luckily, we have a few people in the audience who are specialists at change management, which we do partner with a lot of change management organizations. We have two in particular here. But I would say it's about understanding the audience, understanding the business objectives, and understanding the impact on the people, the process, and the leadership. We talk about hyper integration, and hyper integration, I think I talked about the three things that go alongside the tech, the systems, and the data, and that's the people, the process, and the leadership. And I would say probably every organization we start to talk to, it's about understanding the leadership's approach to delivering these solutions. So it might be, what's our approach on Gen AI? It might be your boss asking you that. It might be the board's position on AI in general, the board's position on data strategy. So I would say a lot of it does start at the top and then percolate down. But it's probably a long-winded answer, but I don't know if that answers any of your question.
Yeah, I was thinking really about the orchestration, because essentially you're layering different machine learning models from what I can understand,
Okay.
and they're impacting different functions within the organization. So those decisions have to be taken in sync.
Yeah.
For the value to be realized. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so not about the technology orchestration, you're talking about the process orchestration in the organization. Yeah, again, I think so. This is going into our methodology quite a lot of detail. But however, when we map an organization, we map the capability model and understand each capability in the organization that might be affected by that change. And I think that's really where it starts. So when we do an engagement, we have an initial discovery, and I would say 75% of that discovery is looking at the people aspect, understanding which capabilities it impacts, which processes, and then the technology underneath comes second, I would say. So hopefully in a short space of time I've answered your question, but very happy to carry on with that conversation. What's your name, sorry?
It's Graham.
Graham, nice to meet you, Graham. Thank you for the question.
Sorry, we are going to leave together.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks very much. I don't know if Google would like to respond to that question.
Well, I was going to say, actually, I think one of the interesting things is we have and we're all guilty of it, is we think about what our current workforce are going to do when they suddenly have 70 different types of interfaces, suddenly providing multiple answers to them at the same time. And I think what we have to consider is there is wholesale change through the entire work stream. So if I look at my own day-to-day work now, so I've been very lucky. I have Gen AI tools that are at my disposal on a day-by-day basis, and I use them, but it's forced me to have to use them, because actually if I use, and there's none of my team in here so I can get away with this, I will use my auto respond function on email. I will have AI create content for me, and then I will read and sense check something. But the way I compose emails today, the way I compose meeting notes has fundamentally changed. But there is definitely a role augmentation that will have to guide our organization through. And part of that is slightly uncomfortable. And I think as technology advocates and leaders and people that are interested in implementing in the room, there is a real understanding that you are going to have to change in our world is normally something we implement upon others, right? And I say that quite affectionately. We normally are the people that are taking a technology. We are normally the most learned or smartest people in the room on that tech, and we implement it in an organization. But we are going to have to make that change ourselves. So I know for a fact that it's an uncomfortable space for most of us, because actually we have to change the way we work ourselves in order to maximize value from it. But what I would suggest is it's also about understanding and helping people augment their roles. The most common question we always get is, does this mean we are going to lose people? Can I take people out of an organization? And the fundamental difference, depending whichever way you try it, is the choice has always been yours. It's always yours, whether you choose to remove people. But the majority of organizations will choose to either grow their top line, augment and tackle a different market, become more efficient and tackle a new space, and they will actually reduce their bottom line. Ultimately, it's about growing, and if you're a public listed company, how much more revenue you can grow, and that has the impact on the share price. But there is a very real conversation to be had internally about what this will do. We can't skirt around this issue. It is hugely focused on staff augmentation, hugely focused on staff learning. And if we don't make those investments in an adequate and meaningful way as we adopt new technology, then there will become fractures in the business. And I think that's the thing that we all have to embrace quite openly.
Thank you very much. Well, the tough question guys just left the room.
Go on, there's got to be one more question.
Any other? Yes.
So I think if we're all honest with ourselves, we're not. I think if we're all honest with ourselves, and we're not one of your customers already, we all have legacy systems, which in a quiet room we would say some of them are great and some of them are really not great. And we all hate systems change because it kind of in our heads gets in the way of just doing the do. So when you're going to engage with you guys, Xiatech, what is, you touched on it a little bit in your previous answer, but what is the typical sort of engagement process that you would take if we took a deep breath and knocked on your door? Because it all seems so bloody obvious we should be doing it tomorrow. How do you go about bringing us into the world that you've shared with us tonight?
Thanks, Guy. So Guy and I started our career together at Marks and Spencer. My early life at Marks and Spencer, I used to wake up about 4:45 in the morning every Monday, and you probably had the same. In fact, Rob and Guy were both there. We had to arrive in the buying departments at about 5:30 in the morning. I don't know if you got away with this or not, but I had to get there at 5:30 in the morning and then run off all the sales figures on this dot matrix printer and hope to God that it worked at that time of morning. It was the most horrific process. And thankfully they replaced that. But that was part of the legacy that was there. You know, that was the general, we'll get the grads to come in and run off the reports every Monday and they can hope it's right. And then we had to get a ruler and put little straight lines across. I mean, it's horrific. Every Monday. And then I moved to technology because I thought it might be cool. So I would say the answer is don't start with the technology. It's never, the technology is never the answer to start with. It might be the answer eventually, but actually, first of all, it's understanding what those business outcomes are that you want to achieve. And it really does start with the business. And I say this, I run a technology firm, right? I would love to say, oh, we've got some great technology, just put that in. But actually, it's about understanding the business problems you're trying to solve and really understanding that and making sure people can articulate it in business terms first. There's always a temptation to jump down into technology. I don't think I'm teaching anyone here to suck eggs, but it really is understanding what those business problems are, translating them into business problems or business solutions, sorry, and then the technology comes last. It's probably, I would say in a nutshell. Any of the Xiatech guys want to add anything to that? Okay, I'll come back to you in 2 seconds. But anyone want to add to that in the Xiatech team at all? Would you think you'd probably mirror that, right, Ara, Charlie? Yeah. Good. I've got lots of nods. At least I've got something right today.
So I had a question.
Thank you, guys.
Sorry.
Karen.
I had a question about the composable AI. When you talk about the concept of one model feeding another, models we know they go stale and they produce funny things sometimes. And if you have one model feeding another and another and another, you might just get something quite odd at the end. So what controls, how would you govern all of this? How do you make sure that actually they still work in the way that it's intended?
So if I understand the question, that's around how do you prevent the models from going stale and therefore affecting the next model that's going to learn from the previous one that might be stale. I'm not going to try and answer that, but I tell you, I have someone who can answer that. So Alberto is our head of data science. Maybe Alberto.
Yeah, so what we have in place are every time a model produces a prediction, it also produces a confidence level, how confident is about that prediction. Sometimes are tricky, sometimes are very straightforward. So the straightforward ones get immediately propagated across the network. You might have seen that as, for example, Susan was talking before about customer segmentation. Some customers might be within 2 segments, so it's a bit blurred. Maybe those ones have a lower confidence of, I know what this is, but still we transfer something out. And the receiving model it has tests in place. So it will do simulations on was this useful or not. So each one of the models has those firewalls of not projecting out any data that is not confident about. And also the receiving models have test cases in place to simulate whether that was useful or not. So they decide whether they should really trust that other model or not. Sometimes those links that we saw there are really broken because we cannot build bridges onto unreliable information. So we are trying to put everything in place to keep the whole overall system accurate. That first model that maybe is not trustworthy for another one might be still performing relatively well within its own realm, but it might not be good enough to propagate information out. So yeah, we do have firewalls and test cases in place. If that answers your question.
Can I add a Google angle onto that for you? So obviously one of the things that's really important. So I think there are lots of things that we have got valid concerns over when it comes to using AI and models to create information. I think there are a couple of things that we need to get really comfortable with as a populace, which is the first one is what does the model itself produce, right? And the model itself is only interpreting information it has access to. So one of the ways to have confidence in the output of the model is have confidence in the data storage, in the data stores and the data sets the model has access to in the first place. I think a lot of worries around hallucination in the early days around kind of, I'm going to say competitors technology are around, things that seemed factual and were created in ways that could replicate real live simulation or information, but were completely erroneous. One of the big things that Google tackled very early on was around what we call factuality. So you'll know that when you use Google search, you have the referenceability for where the information came from. We've inherited and taken that into all of our large language models. So even if you use any of the Gemini models, any of our more historical Palm models, and you use it to run up against a piece of information, it will show you the lineage of where that information came from. So you can verify its truth and source. The other aspect of it is understanding, and again, this goes back to education around the prompt engineering side. So one is, don't get me wrong, generative AI systems can be fabulous for doing things like creating amazing birthday cards and creating images and doing all sort of fun things. But we've had use cases where companies like, for example, BT, and this is a public reference, have effectively taken all of their financial historical information and created an internal query engine. So everything they're referencing is stuff they trust. So one of the conversations I would recommend that you have with some of the Google team and Xiatech team is understanding the architecture you're going to use and where the information comes from. That's a crucial factor. And where you are taking external sources, right, that you weight those decisions appropriately and you understand where the factuality comes from. No problem at all.
Thank you for the question.
It's a good question.
Actually, I wanted to add something. We also need to take into account that it's not a static model, so data keeps flowing in. At one moment, a model might not be reliable, but with new information or new AIs connected to that, it might become reliable at some point, and then we build that bridge. So it's all automated within composable AI model.
Alberto is around all night if you want to have a chat with him. We are getting the timeout, so I'm going to take one more question because I know there might be some more burning questions in the audience, and if not, I've been saved. Anyone else got anything to ask at all? Hopefully we answered every question you may ever have on AI. Look, I just want to say a big thank you to Google for hosting us. It's really kind of you. Thank you to everyone for coming. Thank you to Alex and the team for arranging everything. This was brilliant. And every chair pretty much was taken. So it's brilliant. Thank you very much. There's some drinks and some food at the back. And big thanks, Glenn, for helping organise as well. And to all of you for coming. Thank you very much, guys. I'm very sorry about being late. That's not your fault.
I literally got downstairs on the tube line and it was just literally sat on the tube and the train came in, the doors come in, it's open, and then it didn't move. And then eventually we got left upstairs.
Hello,
Hi there,
nice
you
to meet
again.
you.
Hi, nice to meet you. How are you?
Very good. Try coming down from North Yorkshire in the morning. Train load, shocking.
I'll say
2 hours and 4 hours. Honestly, we could sit and chew over that train.
I don't. And they're also a couple of my clients. And I'm like, oh, come on, like we can't. I'm not remember, but like some of our organisations
Switch them off for 5 minutes. That's what you need to do.
Like, yeah, turn on again.
That's it.
Hi there.
So, I've got to disappear, I'm afraid. this is Chris, so say no if you're not. But tomorrow afternoon, do you have any time for coffee? If I was coming to you, or is it not good tomorrow? If it's not, I'll catch you another time. Preferably, so I've had that.
I've been ill, but now it's
You can't get it. Son, we don't.
brilliant. I'm so pleased about that.
It gets better. Mid to end afternoon. I mean, if you, my training round was 7 15 spots.
Amazing. Yeah.
It's any time.
Yeah. So 4 o'clock.
Perfect. That works for you. I'll come to you. Where
Fitzrovia.
you've got my number, haven't you? I'll be looking at it. Just get it saved rather, because then you can put the rest of the
Yeah, definitely. Come in. Say hi. Let's be so embellished. Like you made it.
It wasn't just a cheap question. No. You put a lot of set it up there and you.
Like, there's a lot of thought in that. It's amazing.
It was all happening up here.
You wonder its origins.
Yeah, perfect. Yes, super. See you there. Thanks, well done. Really good. Yeah. Chit chat. You go and sell to the system.
What? Him?
Yeah, no, not to him.
Right. Good. Thank you very much.
Yeah. But this is quite special. This one's quite special.
Earlier. All right. Off on a Mulberry.
Again, it's small word retail.
You can just connect. Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course. There you go. Sorry about that. So I was just okay.
assume it's in the public domain anyway.
Depends what you want to say.
No, some of the spending.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Not a check for.
No, 100%. And very thank you for doing so.
Yes.
Okay, fine.
My background.
Okay, fine.
Research.
Yeah. Oh, right, fine.
And most recent sport.
Okay, great.
Main chapter.
Okay.
The AI will be running for the AI.
Well, the AI angle is just growing exponentially. And I think the view on what AI can be like, the thing that's blown me away is the rate and pace of the so no one is doing anymore. Let's take it, put it into prod, we'll test it quickly, then we'll think about it. And it literally just goes moving so quickly. Well, I think there's a general consensus of leading edge is a bad thing, and especially now, you look at the generation. There's people that traditionally moan and whinged about don't use it.
Great, well done.
But at a lower level, they don't care. And also, granted, we have a demo, but we did ask, one of our guys early in the morning, like, tell a joke. And it kind of took around using the French words. But it wasn't rude. Some of the filters we've got, so usually in our models, we have where we come from search, predictive search, child safety. We make those in there to our large language models. So, for example, one of his security every trying to do good with LLMs like and we will, our models will not yeah, and that's interesting. I had I also think AI. One of the entry to acquire sometimes it could equally be, can I get my child mouse?
How's that work?
No different. So we have Gemini. What was Bard? We have now we have about 5 billion search. Right. Now going through Gemini. So people are asking very different one of my favorite stats is my mind. On average, 12% search is finding I know, I'm like, hello people search. I'm really bored. I'm boring. But for me, research is not about people. The advertising world is going to become mostly that much. Where retailers where retailers will differentiate from growth and their digital interactions, those that embrace Google search technology, so what we call Google retail search, onto their own property. Because if you think about the majority of, I'm not offending, but the majority of e-com transactions ultimately land in the product catalog page based upon using additional search to find it. But basically, when it was last, which means, especially in retail, you've got fast fashion, you've got trading where you've got things to sell very quickly. If you search for jacket, planet, plans, and then you go there and it's not stock, guess what most people do? Right, it's like 80% of the UK, 80% of Western retail consumers go back on their web browser in Amazon, same property. Yes, they're going to try it once with a brand name on, it changes. If you think about what you're doing with Gemini search on premise for anyone in the retail space, that's going to blow, change the way you integrate with it.
Is Gemini an extension of Google?
Gemini, so if you think about going to www.google.com,
Yes.
that capability to search for products, and the result we give you is the last time you indexed the most expensive web page, and it feels like this or BQ, what else? If you were to go, for example, to Macy's today, or we're playing it, playing it at Chanel, playing it in Paris. If you were to land on their webpage today, and you would search for something, that's my job. I'd like to buy a black dress, and I have
You type that on a regular basis
I do
yourself?
personally,
Yeah, good. Yeah, good. Matching heels.
But you know, so I like to wear jeans. But you know, so here's a really rich one. I'd like a pair of clothes, but I'm a cyclist, so I'd like to get a type of car.
Yeah.
But that is not a search that Bloomreach or Solar or understands.
Yeah.
But Google understands.
So when you say Google Retail, this is what I've just said.
Google Retail.
So if I find a John Lewis, for instance, and I want to allow him to go to
Correct. We now want that as a capability.
this is like the same thing at all, but for many years ago.
Yes.
Many was this the box?
I've got one on my desk.
Yes.
And I used to work at Dell. And that customers I sold because people just wanted one in their data center. Yep, Dell 2850s with Google searches. So yeah, it's that. But it's now but now we've got the search query string that's backed up to the Gemini large language model. So you think about a couple of really interesting factors. If you're a retailer, so the example you tell us, launched someone was wearing it. Silk dress with lemons on it. The dress like 8,500, which hopefully none of our going out buying. But what they might want to do is take that image and drag that into a search bar and then find the nearest express thing that's Primark.
Yeah.
That's where search is going. So Gemini search for retail is now live. In our partnership with Samsung, now got the UK which search. If you're on a web page, you're going to circle it on your phone and it will search for Primark. So Samsung devices now have Google Gemini AI built into device level. Same, it's all just by happening itself. I'm quite comfortable with because they're kind of anything this is the last earnings talk happened simply actually mentioned AI for the first time ever. So there's a big worry going on there. So it's infusing every aspect of what we do. But then you start to get some really interesting things. What we launched last week, which is Gemini 1.5. We're rolling these out all the time now. And that, up until now, the greatest number of characters you could put, tokens you could put to a search screen is 120,000 tokens, right?
That's quite a lot.
It is. But to put it in context, we just want Gemini 1.5, which is 1 billion token capability. Now, why is that important? Let's just say that you want to take a video file and drop it into Gemini and then say to me, write me a summarization of what this video is. Right. Produce this in 6 different languages. And it can now do up to an hour of footage, right? Or think about applications in the security space where you can take CCTV footage, give you knowledge and analyze and summarize it as it works. The utilization of this stuff is going to get fast. And this is kind of where the composable AI piece comes in. Businesses don't have to now be capable to build an AI capability. They have to be able to build an AI platform or vertex. And my hope is that one day we just have all of the models available in vertex and we become the orchestration layer for AI. Because I mean, I'm saying it's going to be 3 years. you know, Google's been doing AI for 19 years. Right? I mean, like most of the working for 19 years, right? We've been doing AI on Gmail for that long.
Yeah.
Right? No.
Yeah, but search on Gmail's been phenomenal, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been doing AI for 19 years. You know, no one realized within OpenAI capability basically was built off a white paper by Google back in 2016 on HLRF, human-based reinforcement learning, which is where we file and give away the data sets around HLRF and transformers, which are the fundamental building blocks of GPT, right? Generative pre-trained transformers. So it's all good. Wait, but that's why we look at what we're doing now around Gemini and the step change in where we're going. You know, it's an interesting model right now. I spent a lot of time talking about this. And you look at the whole company, AI is going to be a really interesting background, but it's focused on kind of who engineers the capability nowadays. And really, there's only really companies truly engineering AI capability, which really is OpenAI, but I mean, I'm interested in your views on what you think that Microsoft fiddling with OpenAI is going to do to it, because the fundamentals of open technology, and I ran Red Hat for Europe, so I'm kind of being indoctrinated in open source for a number of years.
Yep. Early start, yep, and it kind of just become a bit like I'm doing something. I'm now doing something.
Yeah,
that's kind of and just around my context. Billion times bigger than Google ever be. And I were like, okay, because we're now kind of embedded into ChatGPT. And if I look, I was at my phone up there, I was looking at screen time, and my screen time is mainly in front. Now it's ChatGPT on my phone because I go there first. So this is confusing.
so let me ask you a really interesting question.
Yeah.
What do you think, and what are your concerns about your own business's governance by using an open model where all of your information becomes open?
It's where so Google and Facebook,
Yeah,
they generate their revenue based on information.
at scale.
Yeah, that's good. Microsoft, so Microsoft are a productivity, and I pay him to go back to I pay I use it as a gift my information, and that's the way. That's how I think something.
No, I think it's a valid information. I think the question that a lot of people have right now is there twofold. I think for productivity tools, ChatGPT, but I think actually, I can't talk at school, but with what we've got coming on the line, I think I'll become less and less relevant. At the end of the day, this is the one thing that's thinking about AI, large language models, and data integration is sort of about data access points. And as I said, you've got 127 million people roughly using ChatGPT. You've got 5 billion people using search. The question is far greater. But what I think is interesting is